Good afternoon, everybody. This is Caleb here with Indiana Storm Chasing Network. We have a lot to talk about, not a lot of time to talk about it. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. We're watching a significant severe weather threat across Indiana tomorrow afternoon. As you can see here by the Storm Prediction Center, most of Indiana is now in an enhanced risk, which is a level 3 out of 5. This is the latest advisory. This is actually the 2 o'clock advisory, so just hot off the presses from the Storm Prediction Center. Again, a 3 out of 5, which is there in orange, which encompasses the entire state of Indiana, with the exception of ports of Lake and Porter County and portions of northwest Indiana. Again, the greatest risk tomorrow, we're going to be talking about damaging winds with the potential for some significant damaging winds. You can see there in the hatched area there in red where those little dashes are. That is an area highlighted by the Storm Prediction Center where we see potential for winds in excess of 70-plus miles an hour. So again, a lot of speed shear, a lot of wind shear, a lot for these storms to tap into. That can potentially produce some significant wind gusts up to 70-plus miles an hour is not out of the question. But again, wind is not the only issue that we need to talk about tomorrow. We do have a tornado risk, which encompasses the entire state of Indiana, is in some sort of risk for tornadoes tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow night. We do have a hatched area across southern Indiana. A hatched area means significant tornadoes are possible. Again, EF2 plus tornadoes. The environment is capable of producing those kind of tornadoes, especially across the southern half of Indiana tomorrow. So again, highlighted by the Storm Prediction Center, they have that area in yellow for the possibility of where the environment seems to be most favorable at for those stronger tornadoes. But again, outside of that zone, we have a lot of wind shear to work with. So again, the atmosphere is very volatile tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. So again, a tornado risk does accompany the entire state of Indiana as we go throughout the day tomorrow. We also have a large hail risk in the state tomorrow. Again, large hail, golf ball or larger possible there where you see that hatched area there in red. That is an area where we could see some isolated supercells tomorrow afternoon. Again, when we have those isolated updrafts, that is where our greatest hail risk will be present throughout the day tomorrow. Without further ado, let's go ahead and time it out here for you. I know that's the main question on everyone's mind is when are these storms coming? Are they coming before church, after church? What are we looking at? And what do we need to do to be prepared? So let's go ahead and time this out here. Here is the latest HRRR model here. This is a numerical model, a mathematical model. So it updates pretty regularly here. Here we are tomorrow. I guess here we are. Here's 3 a.m. tonight. So again, some standard rain showers, maybe a couple rumbles of thunder here later tonight after midnight as the warm front moves into the region here. But then we clear out here potentially, and this is the uncertain. This is where uncertainty lies. When will this rain clear out tomorrow morning, and what cloud cover does it leave behind? Is it going to clear out and leave us clear to allow that daytime heating to occur and really allow the atmosphere to further destabilize, therefore increasing the risk for severe weather across the state? Or is that rain going to kind of stick around and inhibit some of that further destabilization from occurring? So those are some unknowns that we won't really have a real indication of until tomorrow. We really won't know how this rain will affect the environment until day one, until tomorrow, when we have a better idea. But here we are. Here's 11 a.m. tomorrow. A few isolated thunderstorms could be possible here firing across western Indiana, but things really begin to kick off here after 2 p.m. 2 p.m. we start to see the environment really starting to come together and really become conducive for severe weather, especially across western Indiana and southwest Indiana after 2 p.m. Here we go further in the afternoon. Again, rapid growth is expected here in these thunderstorms, and these thunderstorms are expected to start as isolated storms. Again, isolated storms means all hazards are on the table. Storms by themselves have a history of being stronger. These are supercells in nature, as being predicted here by this forecast model here. Again, the greatest area of concern early afternoon is southwest Indiana and southern Illinois. You can see these isolated cells down in here. These are all supercell thunderstorms. You can kind of see how the model wants to put hooks on them as well. So again, a very volatile afternoon tomorrow. So an area definitely worth watching here. But then as we go into mid-afternoon, again, widespread showers and thunderstorms now encompassing central Indiana, western Indiana perhaps. But when these storms, are they going to be isolated, or are they going to grow upscale into a quasi-linear system, or a QLCS, which is a fancy term for a line of storms? Kind of like what we've been seeing across Indiana, where storms start out isolated and then they merge into a line of storms, transitioning into a very strong damaging wind risk followed by a spin-up tornado risk, very similar to what we've had here over the last couple events here across Indiana. Again, a very typical early spring system here is what we have on the table, with all the ingredients starting to come together, and we're starting to see that on forecast models as well. Here we are at 5 p.m. tonight. Again, round one, we could have 2 rounds potentially as well. So something to keep in mind, we could have an early afternoon round, which could hold isolated supercells, isolated tornadoes, large hail damaging winds. And then round 2, we could have a line of storms moving through, depending on the evolution of these storms, and ultimately depending on how early the rain moves out tomorrow morning. So again, still some questions yet to be answered, and we'll figure those out overnight tonight and definitely into tomorrow morning as well. So here we are. There's 6 p.m. tonight. Again, could have some thunderstorms out ahead of the main line here by 6 p.m. Here we are at 7 p.m. tonight. Southern Indiana really picking up. But something to watch here. We have to watch these isolated storms. If we are able to get isolated supercells ahead of the main line, those are the storms to watch for your greatest tornado potential tomorrow night. Again, isolated storms have the best potential to tap into that wind shear aloft and instability and moisture ahead of the main line. And those will be the storms to really keep an eye on across Southern Indiana tomorrow night for all hazards from large hail, potentially golf balls, as well as a few isolated tornadoes as well. Cannot be ruled out in these isolated storms. If we're able to get them isolated ahead of the main line, they'll eventually be absorbed, or likely be absorbed or congeal with the main line as it quickly sweeps across the state. Here we are at 8 p.m. tonight, or tomorrow night rather, and then storms look to exit the state between the 10 p.m. and midnight time frame. And by this time, we're looking at a QLCS, or quasi-linear convective system. So a brief synopsis here. Storms are expected to fire and remain isolated tomorrow afternoon. That's definitely a trend that we're going to have to keep an eye on. How fast do they congeal into a line of storms and transition from a supercellular risk into a QLCS, or quasi-linear risk, right? How fast do they transition between a tornado or all hazards risk into more of a wind threat with a spin-up tornado risk as well? So when does that transition happen? How long do they remain isolated? And how does that rain play a role into the evolution of these thunderstorms in the overall environment tomorrow afternoon? Those are our uncertainties right now. And we like to talk about this in the SLIM method, right? Shear, lift, instability, and moisture. Here's kind of a map of the ingredients that we have in play tomorrow across the entire state of Indiana. Again, just like the last few questions, wind shear is actually off the charts with this system. We have an abundance of wind shear, both in speed and directional. Again, wind shear, there's multiple kinds of wind shear. A lot of people don't know that, but wind shear can be both defined as speed shear, wind changing in different speeds with height, as well as changing in directions with height. So when we have that change in speed and direction, that really allows these storms to pick up that motion, that turbulent motion, and begin to rotate. So that's something that we have in play tomorrow. Our limiting factor, though, is lift and instability. We have a lot of lift. We have a lot of kinetics with this system with the amount of wind shear that we have. But instability is the greatest uncertainty right now with how far north that instability is able to build. And a lot of that has to do with early showers and cloud cover that some models suggest that we have tomorrow morning. So again, how well does the atmosphere respond? How fast do those showers and clouds move out overnight tonight into tomorrow morning? Will all kind of tell the story and lead up to how well the atmosphere is able to destabilize into tomorrow afternoon, into tomorrow evening. So those are things we have to keep an eye on. And this dial may go up or down in correlation to that factor as well. We have plenty of moisture to work with tomorrow as well. That's another threat on the table, is actually flash flooding. We could have some flash flooding and training showers and thunderstorms tomorrow, especially across central Indiana and southern Indiana, where thunderstorms are expected to be quite heavy in nature, and we could have a couple rounds of showers and thunderstorms as well. Again, our soils are already pretty wet. They're already very moist from previous shower and thunderstorms of the last few days. So it doesn't take much to really recreate ponding on the roadways and our ditches to be filled up. So again, a multi-hazard threat here tonight, or tomorrow into tomorrow night. Let's go ahead and get to the comments here and try to answer your questions. We have a lot of you guys in here. We got Julie in here, Tommy in here, Terry's in here, Riley's in here. We got Michigan Storm Chasers in here. Great to see you guys. Janice is in here as well. So if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. We want to make sure everyone is on the same page. Everyone is aware of what is going on tomorrow. That way we can be prepared for whatever the scenario is. Again, there's a couple scenarios possible. It really depends on how the atmosphere is able to destabilize. Think of it this way: more instability, the greater chances for severe weather. If those early morning showers and cloud covers hang around a little bit longer than expected, we could have a little bit lower of a risk for severe weather. But right now, our latest guidance is really trying to have that convection out of the area rather quickly. So again, that's a trend we're going to have to keep an eye on. And that is why the Storm Prediction Center went ahead and has an enhanced risk over nearly the entire state of Indiana, with the exception of far northwest Indiana. So that's a level 3 out of 5 in orange. Again, all hazards are on the table, from large hail, potentially golf ball size. Again, the large hail threat will largely be limited to those isolated supercells that we talked about early. If storms are able to stay discrete, stay isolated by themselves, again, that's where your largest hail threat will be. Once they grow upscale into a fast-moving QLCS or quasi-linear convective system, that's your squall line that'll come through. Your hail risk goes down, but you can still see some quarters or isolated instances of large hail. But your main threats transition to a damaging wind threat as the primary risk, with chances for significant wind gusts at the 70-plus miles an hour in that scenario, followed by those spin-up tornadoes. Again, just like what we had the other night, a couple weeks ago on a Sunday night, we had that same scenario happen where supercells evolved into a quasi-linear convective system, and we had several tornadoes spin up from that event. So again, a very similar type of setup. We call it high shear, low cape, where we have lots of wind shear present, with our greatest uncertainty being instability. But as we learned, it doesn't take a lot of instability for these storms to be able to tap into the other ingredients that we have present tomorrow. And so that is why the Storm Prediction Center and the National Weather Service as a whole has really been heating in on that notion that, hey, we have a threat, we need to be prepared. We could have a couple different scenarios possible, but again, all hazards are possible, and we need to be aware and ready for that. Just in case a warning is issued where you are located, whether that's a severe thunderstorm warning or tornado warning. It's always good to heed these situations seriously. That way we can be prepared in the worst case scenario. Yeah, we'll go back to the comments here again. See a couple questions in here. Do you think a moderate risk is possible from the SPC if models uptrend? Asked Casey. And actually, I do. I would not be surprised. Again, a lot of that has to do with, again, like we talked about earlier, how the atmosphere evolves. Okay, if we have that morning showers and thunderstorms move out early tomorrow morning and we see some sunshine, that'll help the atmosphere destabilize. That'll help our air parcels rise. We need that rising motion to help get clouds up as well. And so if we are able to see that, I think the greatest risk for a marginal risk would be across southern Indiana. Let's say draw a line from Corydon to Indianapolis to Terre Haute and southwestward. That's really the area. Southwest Indiana, I think, has the greatest chance of being upgraded. And again, that doesn't mean we're going to see an upgrade. A lot of that has to deal with what we call mesomechanics, or day one ingredients. What ingredients do we actually have in place tomorrow, and what is the actual atmosphere looking to do? Is it going to, right now it's all based on model guidance and ingredients that we have in place today that'll affect the environment tomorrow. Once we get into day one, the Storm Prediction Center will look at the table, the drawing board, right? And we'll see, all right, we have these ingredients in place here this morning. Rain showers are in fact moving out, so therefore, we could further destabilize and they may then pull the trigger. But it really depends on how the atmosphere evolves overnight tonight into tomorrow, whether we'll see an upgrade or not. But I think it's on the table. I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a moderate tomorrow. But again, that's highly conditional on how the atmosphere evolves overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning. So it's conditional there, but possible. I've heard that there is a 50% chance of tornadoes Sunday night into Monday morning. I think that's a little high, Sean. 50% is a little high. Right now from the Storm Prediction Center, they actually have a 10 to 14% chance. Again, that is a 10 to 14% chance of seeing a tornado within any point within 25 miles. So it's a fairly high chance, but it's not greater than 40%. But again, don't let those percentages fool you, especially if we get into a QLCS setup where you have those notches on the leading edge. As we learned from the other night, a lot of us learned that QLCS tornadoes or spin-up tornadoes can spin up very quickly. A lot of times it's very difficult for the radar operator to catch them. And that's not because by anybody's fault by the National Weather Service. That's just the nature of the beast. These things are very shallow. Oftentimes they spit up between radar scans, so you can have a tornado on the ground and lift before the next radar beam comes around. That's how fast some of these things spit up. So again, all hazards on the table tomorrow. Here's the tornado risk for the state of Indiana. Again, the highest the Storm Prediction Center feels across southern Indiana, which I'd have to agree with that. A little bit more environment to work with down there, a little bit more ingredients to work with down there. A little bit more instability to work with, moisture, and a little bit more wind shear as well, both in speed and directional. But again, we're still 24, 36 hours out yet. So again, we could change here. We're about 24 hours away, if not maybe a little bit more. And so there is still times for tweaks and wobbles in the forecast here. And ultimately it depends on how much rain comes in tonight and how much leftover rain is there tomorrow morning and how much time do we have to destabilize before the cold front comes through as our main trigger, our main driver for these thunderstorms. So again, still some few things to work out here as we go into the day tomorrow. But again, all hazards on the table for sure. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, let me know. Go ahead and put those in there. Again, don't be shy to ask questions. We're here to answer those for you here this evening. We want everybody on the same page going into tomorrow afternoon. That way we are all severe weather prepared. We'll go ahead and time it out for you for those of you just joining us. Here we are later tonight. Here's 3 a.m. tonight. Again, scattered showers and perhaps some thunderstorms across Indiana as a whole. And this will be the key factor into our severe weather potential tomorrow. How fast do these get out of Indiana and allow the atmosphere to destabilize? In fact, let me turn on cloud cover here. You can see these holes here. That's clear skies. Here's 3 a.m. in the morning. Let's go back to 12Z here. Here we go. Again, here's 7 o'clock in the morning. Here's 9 o'clock in the morning. Again, by mid-morning, this particular model run has us pretty clear in the most part. A few clouds around, but a few breaks in the clouds as well being depicted here. So perhaps kind of suggesting maybe some daytime heating could perhaps occur. But again, it's conditional. This is a guidance run. What it'll actually look like, we won't know until tomorrow morning how these showers move out here. But the main hazard threat really starts after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Here's 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Showers and thunderstorms are firing rapidly across southern Illinois, eastern Missouri, northwestern Kentucky, and southwest Indiana. You can see how they're isolated in nature. This would entail a supercellular storm mode, right? Isolated supercells look to fire between that 2 to 3 p.m. time frame. Here's 3 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. Again, rapid development of perhaps a few intense supercells across Illinois, even southwest Indiana as well. Again, this is where your largest hail threat will be as well. Associated with these isolated supercells, you can't rule out a tornado in these either, especially with the wind shear that we have. But I can't stress enough the large hail that some of these storms are capable of producing tomorrow with the ingredients that we have. We're talking golf balls are larger, and some of the more intense cores cannot be ruled out in some of these isolated supercells across southwest Indiana, southern Illinois, early tomorrow afternoon. As we go into the afternoon, storms quickly congeal into a quasi-linear convective system. That's kind of like a fancy meteorological term for a line of showers and thunderstorms. These storms will kind of merge. They're all mashed together into a line, which will quickly sweep across the state from west to east. Once they do that, once we see that transition happen, we kind of see a shift in the hazards a little bit. Damaging winds becomes the primary risk, with secondary risks being spin-up tornadoes and large hail. The hail threat kind of goes down a little bit, but you can still have intense cores within the line still capable of producing golf balls. We saw that a couple weeks ago in southern Indiana, around the French Lick area, I believe. But again, damaging winds really takes over with the amount of speed shear that we have. Again, there's multiple types of wind shear, both directional, winds changing in direction with height. We could have winds out of the south at the ground, but then you go up a few thousand feet and they're out of the west. You have that crossover. That's directional wind shear. Speed shear is when you have winds at different speeds with height. At the ground, they could be 20 to 30 miles an hour. But you go a couple thousand feet off the ground, you could go from 20 to 30 all the way up to 70 to 80 miles an hour. So that difference in speed and direction really helps these storms become severe. And once you get them severe and tapping into those ingredients, that's when you really see the hazards come into play as well. So that's why we could have a damaging wind threat a significant damaging wind threat once we see a QLCS form or that line of thunderstorms because of how fast the winds are moving aloft. Those updrafts could bring that wind down to the ground in the form of straight line winds. So again, a multi-hazard day tomorrow, timing between 2 p.m. and midnight. After midnight, the storm should be out of Indiana. So it's not going to be as late as what we saw a couple weeks ago, but still a potent system nonetheless and worth watching as well. So here we are at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, widespread showers and thunderstorms across Indiana. Some of these could be strong to severe, especially with all hazards on the table, if you can get them isolated enough. And although the greatest tornado risk is in southern Indiana, we could still see some isolated supercells across northern Indiana. This model in particular places a couple in northern Indiana. But again, this is just a model projection. This is just an algorithm based on the data that it has plugged into it at the moment. But again, it gives a really good interpretation of the overall environment or the feel for the day, where you could have some isolated storms early before they merge into a line or QLCS or quasi-linear setup later in the afternoon, early evening timeframe. And here we are at 7 o'clock. Again, our main line of storms now moving across Indy Metro by perhaps 6, 7, 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Damaging winds, primary threat here as we go into late tomorrow evening, close to sunset time frame tomorrow, followed by a spin-up tornado threat. But something to watch, especially across southern Indiana, if we get some what we call prefrontal storms. These are storms that fire out ahead of the main line. They have all the ingredients to themselves. If we're able to see that and see those supercells sustain, we could have a few stronger tornadoes are possible down there as well, especially with their isolated cells. So something we're going to have to watch very closely, especially as we go into tomorrow evening. We'll have to see how that trend evolves. But again, eventually those cells will get ate up or gobbled up by our squall line that'll be moving through much faster. Once we see these lines develop, a lot of times the storm motion increases as well. So once we see that squall line, you'll see it pick up speed as it moves, as it's tapping into that wind shear aloft, and it's really blowing across the state. So we'll see that transition tomorrow night as these storms progress across the state. Could have some pretty fast storm motions too. Storms could be moving 50 to 60 miles an hour tomorrow, especially if we get into that QLCS or quasi-linear stage. Once they grow upscale into a line, we'll start to see those faster storm motions. But again, all severe weather should be done and out of the state by midnight or 1 in the morning tomorrow morning. And then after that, we're in the clear for a couple days. But we do have to watch a couple systems next week as well. Wednesday is another one to watch and be on your radar, but we need to get through tomorrow first before we talk into that. So let's go back to the comments here and see if we have any other questions here. Again, we got Molly in here, Catherine's in here, Emmanuel, Stacy. Great to see you guys in here. Again, if you guys have questions, don't be hesitant to ask. We're all in this together here, and we want to make sure that everyone is aware of what's going on tomorrow, the different scenarios possible tomorrow, and being reassured that we're all prepared and know what to do in the event of severe weather. So it's great to see you guys in here and with us as well. Maxwell asks, any reason why it's been so active? Yeah, it's just kind of the pattern we're stuck in right now. Not a real rhyme or reason to it. Springtime is often very active in the state of Indiana. March is no different. A lot of times in March, we see these bigger systems come through, but we don't always see severe weather associated with them. Again, we can go back to our ingredients list that we have here tomorrow to better explain that. Again, in these early spring systems, wind shear is often off the charts. That arrow very seldomly moves off the red and the pink. In early spring, big time systems that move through, they're very thermodynamically driven systems, meaning they're feeding off warm moist air from the Gulf, cold Arctic air from Canada. There's that transition period, right? March and early spring in Indiana is all about seasonal transition, right? We're transitioning out of a winter climate into a spring, more temperate climate. And as we do that, the atmosphere becomes very volatile, very meridional, very wavy in nature. And we have these bigger systems come through. But a lot of times we don't often always get instability with them. So that's usually our limiting factor in a lot of times in Indiana. But that has not been the case over the last few days, or the last few weeks, rather. We've actually been seeing this system come together with a lot of ingredients that we don't always see. So no real rhyme or reason to it. There's a lot of climatic drivers, or main climate drivers, that have influence on our climate as well. I don't have time to go into them, but there's a lot of different variables that we could go into to talk about why we're seeing the active pattern that we are. But right now, that's the pattern we're in, and it looks to continue here over the next couple weeks as well. Again, we do have a severe weather risk for Wednesday as well, but we'll talk about that after Sunday and once we get a little bit more agreement upon forecast guidance as well. So we're not out of the woods yet for severe weather, but it's always good to be severe weather prepared. Talking about where you need to go in the event of severe weather, and especially a tornado warning as well. I know we've had a lot of questions on this here recently, especially on the page. A lot of interaction with our severe weather awareness post that we put out just the other day, knowing where to go in the event of a tornado. I know tornadoes are often scary. They give a lot of people anxiety, and rightfully so. You know, tornadoes are scary stuff, especially with the unpredictability of tornadoes. You know, we can give a general area that's favored for tornadoes, but we can't exactly say where a tornado is going to form to a T. That's like trying to place bets on where the first bubble is going to rise in a pot of boiling water. You know, the heat's there, the moisture's there, but you don't know where that first bubble is going to rise. It's kind of the same thing in severe weather. You just don't know exactly where that first storm is going to bubble up or where that exact tornado is going to be. So that's kind of why we all need to be severe weather prepared. And the National Weather Service does a pretty good job of giving the most lead time as you can. And again, tomorrow night we'll be live as well, covering severe weather in its entirety across Indiana. We'll do live coverage. We'll do warning by warning updates, et cetera, to keep you ahead of the storm. So we hope to see you tomorrow night. But again, knowing where to go in the event of a tornado is very important. This is a standard depiction of a standard home, a typical farmhouse here in Indiana. We have a lot of them, right? The safest place to be in a tornado is in the center portion of your home, whether it's the stairwell, bathroom. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Basement, anywhere in a basement is generally safe from a tornado. But again, nowhere upstairs, and try not to place yourself next to an exterior wall. No place outside is safe from a tornado, so you need to be inside a sturdy structure. In exterior rooms and walls with windows do not protect you from a tornado, and the biggest reason for that is flying debris and the overall wind. Exterior walls are most vulnerable to collapse. They can be punctured or inundated with debris, so that's a reason why you want to put as many layers, think of it as layers, between you and the outside as possible. I know a lot of people in Indiana live in trailers, prefabricated homes. If you're one of those individuals, we really encourage you to have a severe weather action plan in place. That way you know where to go in the event a tornado warning is issued, meaning you have a storm shelter in mind or a sturdy structure that you can go to. Maybe you can go to that morning before severe weather occurs. That way you're already there, you're already prepared, and you know where to go. Again, trailer parks, mobile homes, prefabricated homes are very dangerous and do not protect you from severe weather in any situation or circumstance. So again, having that predetermined safe place is key for being severe weather prepared here in Indiana. We'll go back to the comments here to further talk about this. We'll go back here. We got Bob here, Brittany in here, Tommy's still in here. Great to see you guys. Daniel says, I thought about my bathtub. Yeah, bathtubs are great. A lot of times in bathrooms, you have interior plumbing. Those pipes also help hold the integrity of the bathroom. Structural integrity is key. A lot of times having those extra pipes or plumbing can actually help hold together that bathroom. So bathrooms are great. Try not to have a bathroom, though, next to an exterior wall or with a window. If you guys have an interior bathroom, that'd be the place to go. Put a mattress over you. Protect your head, right? Your head's the most important piece on your body. You can live without your fingers, but you're not going to live very long without your noggin. So make sure we protect our heads at all costs. What if I don't have an interior room? Yeah, a lot of us don't. A lot of us have open floor plans, right? If you guys have a closet, I'd say that'd be a really good bet. A lot of us have closets that we can go to. Again, try to find as many ways to put as many layers between you and the outside as possible. If you don't have that, I would try to find, maybe a structure or a storm shelter or a place maybe you could go ahead of time. That way you're severe weather prepared and you don't have to worry about it as much. That'd be another thing you could do as well. So having that predetermined place or meeting place that you could go is always a great idea. Whether it's a public facility, like a library or something like that. Those are all great ideas. Yeah. Lon's asking about timing again. Yeah, let's go ahead and time it out for those of you just joining in here. Here we are tomorrow afternoon. Could have a few isolated showers and thunderstorms early tomorrow morning. Some of these could be strong, but the real severe weather risk doesn't really come into play until tomorrow afternoon. Generally after 2 o'clock in the afternoon is when we're looking at the greatest severe thunderstorm risk across Indiana. We are looking to see rapid development after about 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Here's 2 p.m. Isolated storms are firing across southwest Indiana, southern Illinois, and eastern Missouri. These quickly grow into mature supercells, at least depicted by this guidance here. And overall guidance would suggest that a lot of these storms will be isolated in nature to begin with before they grow upscale into a quasi-linear kind of setup or squall line setup here later tomorrow afternoon. But again, all hazards are possible here with these systems. Large hail, golf balls possible, perhaps even a few instances of larger hail than that. Tornadoes, damaging winds, all on the table with these isolated supercells tomorrow afternoon. As we go into mid-afternoon, we start to see these supercells kind of grow upscale a little bit. Upscale meaning they merge together and conjoin into a more of a line or a quasi-linear system. That's a big fancy meteorological term for a line of storms. Once they do that, we're going to see the threats transition from a tornado risk into more of a damaging wind threat, followed by large hail. Can't be ruled out as well. But again, your hail threat kind of goes down once you get into a squall line storm mode. Generally, the hail is confined to Ps all the way up to quarters, but you can still have instances of large hail, especially in these very volatile environments. We saw that a couple weeks ago down near French Lick, or maybe not even a couple weeks ago, where we had a quasi-linear convective system move through, and they got some golf ball size hail down there. So again, large hail is still on the possibility, but damaging winds becomes the primary mode of focus into tomorrow night. Up to 75 miles an hour. Some significant wind gusts are possible thanks to amount of speed shear that we have. You go up a couple thousand feet off the ground, our winds up there are moving at 75, 80 plus miles an hour. So they're moving very, very fast. And when you get these storms that tap into that, they can pull those stronger winds down to the ground in the form of straight line winds. So again, that's the primary risk tomorrow, followed by isolated tornadoes, and large hail can't be ruled out as well. Here we are at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Here's dinner time. Again, could have a couple rounds tomorrow night or storms earlier in the afternoon, exiting Indiana with the main squall line moving across western Indiana. So again, if you're in southern Indiana or really anywhere in the state, 2 rounds are possible tomorrow. And that's highly dependent on how fast rain showers and cloud cover moves out tonight into tomorrow morning. That'll really set the stage for, are we going to have 1 round or 2 rounds? And the severity of those rounds tomorrow will be determined by how much cloud cover and rain we have tomorrow morning. Sooner that goes out, the faster we destabilize, the higher probabilities of seeing a higher coverage of severe weather increases, and vice versa. More rain, more cloud cover in the morning, severe weather decreases just a little bit. So again, those are still some uncertainties that we have to figure out and iron out going into tomorrow. But something to keep an eye on, and especially across southern Indiana, are these isolated storms. Model guidance has been really unwavering that we could have some prefrontal supercells develop. Prefrontal meaning that these are isolated storms that develop out ahead of the main line, and all hazards could be present with those from tornadoes, potentially F2 or greater. Again, we have the environment capable of producing strong tornadoes, given that a storm is able to fully tap into those ingredients. Those are kind of the unknowns right now, but the ingredients are there for that. If we are seeing storms, they're going to be able to tap into that or not. We'll find that out tomorrow. But again, something to watch here. But those storms will eventually get gobbled up by our squall line as they move through. They'll merge into the main line. And here we are at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Northern Indiana, most of your severe weather threat is over by this point in time, with southern Indiana still remaining under the gun. Here we are at 10 p.m. tomorrow night. Most of it is out of the state. And even some clearing here could have some partly cloudy skies behind this across northern Indiana. And here we are by 1 a.m. The threat should be largely out of the state of Indiana with some lingering showers across southern Indiana. So again, timing tomorrow, 2 p.m. all the way to about midnight tomorrow night, perhaps 1 in the morning, depending on how fast these storms move and how quickly they grow upscale into a line. If they quickly grow upscale into a line, we could see those exiting the state a little bit quicker than depicted here, and vice versa. If they remain isolated and discrete longer, it could be a little bit slower progression across the state. So again, still some uncertainties, still some details to be worked out, and we'll have those ironed out tonight into tomorrow, ahead of tomorrow's severe weather event. So again, we'll go over the hazards here one more time before we sign off here. Again, thanks for joining with us here. I really appreciate it. Again, we'll be live tomorrow night as well. We'll be doing severe weather coverage. I'll be on here doing radar coverage and warning by warning detail. That way you guys are in the know, and we'll keep you guys ahead of the storm and know what the warnings are and the hazards associated with them. Again, here's the latest outlook. This is a 2 p.m. advisory from the Storm Prediction Center, hot off the presses here, only half an hour old. Again, a blanket and enhanced risk across the entire state of Indiana. It's a level 3 out of 5, with the exception for Northwest Indiana. Portage, Lake counties, you guys are in a slight risk, which is a 2 out of 5. A little bit lower confidence up there across Northwest Indiana. And a lot of that has to do with how early storms fire. They look to fire off to the south and east a little bit, but nonetheless, could still have some strong thunderstorms up there for you. Damaging winds, primary risk tomorrow. As you can see, nearly the entire state of Indiana, with the exception of Gary, Northwest Indiana, is in a high risk for significant wind gusts. You can see that hatched area there. We could see winds in excess of 70 plus miles an hour, 75 plus miles an hour. That's significant. Again, once you get into the significant wind gust range, though it's straight line winds, it's the same wind speed as a weak tornado. So again, they can cause significant storm damage in the event of significant straight line wind events. So again, high risk for winds followed by isolated tornadoes. We do have a 10% hatch risk across southern Indiana. We could see some expansion of that. It really depends on the overall environment tomorrow and how fast we can get the rain and cloud cover out of the state tomorrow morning. But the entire state is in at least some risk for tornadoes. You got a low risk in brown, a moderate risk there in yellow there where that 10% hatch is, and then a low risk in green there for Gary. In large hail, we do have a significant risk here for hail tomorrow there in the hatched area. The hatched area meaning a greater than a 10% probability within any 25-mile point that we could see hail in excess of 2 inches in diameter. So we're talking golf balls or larger here. Are all in the realm of possibility tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. So with that being said here, guys, it is going on 2:40 here. Been on here for about 40 minutes here. We'll go ahead and hop off here. If you guys miss anything, I encourage you guys to go back to the beginning, rewatch it. We talked about timing, hazards, and the associated risks associated with those. So again, take care, guys. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night. We'll be live here for severe weather coverage here on ISCN. We'll be going in detail, severe weather coverage, radar coverage. We'll have live chasers in the field. And then we'll be doing warning updates as well on here, all live to keep you ahead of the storm. So with that being said here, guys, we will see you guys next time. And we'll see you guys here tomorrow night for our severe weather coverage.